presenter is an award-winning Jewish and Mexican-American political and community organizer, spoken word poet, social justice educator, and musician. He is a National Poetry Slam champion, a 3-time award winner at the College Union Poetry Slam Invitational, and winner of the Sonia Sanchez Langston Hughes Poetry Prize. His work has been featured in Huffington Post, the Boston Globe, NPR, Flama, the Poetry Foundation, and the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. Please put your hands together for Jonathan Mendoza.
Ooh, they got my book up here. I didn't even know that. Look at that. Cool. How are we doing, everyone? That was so weak. How are we doing? Good. Oh, that was a little bit better. We'll work on it. Are you excited for spring break? Yeah. When is spring break? Is that like after tomorrow? Yeah. Nice. Where are you going? To the beach? Portugal. Portugal? Is everyone going to Portugal? No? Why wasn't I invited? Okay, please send me my plane ticket. Cool, so my name is Jonathan. Oh, that's me. Wow, that's really pretty. I use he, him pronouns, and yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I am from Massachusetts originally. I'll talk a little bit more about myself in a second, but I lived in Chicago for a number of years and kind of just like wandered around the area. So, but I don't know that I actually like have been in this part of the state yet. So it's really nice to be here. I went to that diner, the Libertyville restaurant. Do you know people know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, I see one head nod. That place is awesome. Has anybody not gone there? Okay, everybody. Okay, only one person. Great. Oh, good. It's good to hear. But you should go there. That one person who raised your hand. So we're gonna kick it off with a little poem here. Speaking of food, I just need like a quick straw poll. What is, and just shout it out, what is the best dipping sauce? Heard? I hear a lot of honey mustard, ketchup. Okay, raise your hand if it's honey mustard. Raise your hand if it's ketchup. What was something else I didn't hear? Ranch? Buffalo? Okay, you're all incorrect. The correct answer was barbecue sauce. It was tangy barbecue sauce. Thank you. Good job. Extra credit for you. Okay. So here's a new poem. Ode to tangy barbecue sauce. Ode to tangy barbecue sauce, my sweet melted sugar butter, my delectable delight, maple syrup ketchup, high fructose brown thick Gatorade dip. Who would I have become without your blessings? Few items of McD's could I enjoy in the company of friends, mother too kosher and too dietitian for me to ever have near the monolithic Whopper. But you, my sweet tangy, my sauce-alicious saucy, you steadfast salvation at the 2:30 a.m. drive-thru, respite from the anxiety of a 3 a.m. chiding from parents upon our return home. Route 126 Enterprise, the only location open at the hours of possums. You entertain the wrath of newly licensed teens, pleading for the McFlurry machine to not be broken, even as we all know it is working perfectly fine. Suburban oasis, fountain of youth, even in my late 20s, as my awareness of my eventual and dependably increases. Red mustard juice permeating my teeth, my gums, my still good jawbones. Oh, sweet awareness of the inevitable. You rock me to sleep sometimes. Even when the preservatives have burrowed into my blood, you linger on my tongue, savoring the day to keep me awake, a bad feeling for the night, and a good memory for the morning. Shout out to Tangy Barbecue Sauce, yes. Okay. So we're gonna try this again. What's the best dipping sauce? Okay, we'll work on it next time. But, how do I do the clicky thing to go to the next slide?
They'll do it for you.
Oh, they'll do it for me. Okay, beautiful. We're ready. Oh, look at that. Wow, that's beautiful. So my name is Jonathan Mendoza. That's my website if anybody's interested to see more in depth what I do. We can go to the next slide. So I want to do a quick reflection. One thing I want to talk about is a little bit of kind of the input and the output of a little bit of what I'll share with you today. So I have like a certain upbringing, a certain background and experience that has like informed the work I do. I don't think I just like came out the womb and was like, I want to be a writer and I want to do social justice things. Like there's a lot that developed me into wanting to do those things. And I know that you all have kind of that input and output too, right? There are experiences that you're gaining, different things in your family, friends, community that are informing the kind of person you want to be and what you want to create out into the world. So that's what we'll dive in a little bit to today. But for a second, just take like 30 seconds. This is usually like a longer workshop I do, but just to kind of ground ourselves in that as a point of reflection on this question, who and what brought you here? Who and what brought you here? If you want to like write on something, I don't know if you're allowed to use a device, but feel free to do that. If you have like pen and paper and want to do that, or if you just want to meditate on it quietly, that's fine too. Take this however you interpret it. If that means like a bus or a car or a bike that got you here, if that's your parents, teachers, mentors, grandparents, just think pretty broadly about that. All right, let's try this. On the count of 3, just everybody shout out one thing that came to mind answering this question. Who and what brought you here? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
My car. Fifi.
Fifi? Cool. I don't know who's Fifi. Okay, well, we're working on it. My boss, I heard that. Oh, Cece, I'm sorry. Who's Cece? Okay, hi Cece. I heard, did I hear my boss? No? I think I just heard so many different things, it's hard to think. The what?
My car.
Your car, awesome. Anybody else get here by car?
Yeah.
Good amount of people, okay. So maybe some gas, right? Some money to go to that gas, a job or maybe, or family support for that money, right? There's a lot of things little things that I like to dissect in terms of what I think like brought me to this place today. And we're gonna dive into a little bit of that. So we can go to the next slide. Cool. Can you guess which one I am at the bottom?
Middle.
Yes, you got it, good job. So that's me, that's my official artist photo. And the top right, that's my dad. And at the top left, that's my grandfather. A little bit about who I am. I'm a very proud Virgo. Any Virgos in the house?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh,
Capricorn.
we got one. All right. So as I mentioned, I was born in Massachusetts in a town called Framingham. And I am biracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic. My mom is descended from Eastern European Jews, about 3rd or 4th generation in New York. And my dad is from Chihuahua, Mexico. He came at a pretty young age to the US. My dad came for a number of reasons, but in large part because his father, you see up there, my grandfather, is a musician. And my dad both wanted to like meet his father, who's traveling throughout the Southwest US to like earn income as a musician to send money back home to Mexico. But my dad wanted to meet him and also learn his artistic practice and explore music and the arts as well. And so he plays the vibraphone. He's a jazz musician. And my mom, who you see down there at the bottom, has always worked in public health. She's very passionate about the work that she does, and it kind of instilled in me these two things. One, creativity and the value of like artistry and trying to create something beautiful for the world. And 2, really caring for your community and the people around you, and especially those who are suffering the most. With my mom, specific to public health, but that was kind of the value I grew up with generally. And so growing up, I thought a lot about these things. I thought about those values that my parents instilled in me, but also my personal upbringing, what it was to be growing up biracial in a relatively diverse town, and also somewhat religious as a young Jewish person and a Jewish person of color. And I thought a lot about race, immigration, multiraciality, privilege and class inequality between both sides of my families, and just different things about the relations between the US and Mexico and other parts of the world and the global South. and just how oppression functions generally across the world. We can go to the next one. There we go. That's me on the right. That's my brother on the left. I was not happy about that. There's a what?
Oh, there's a clicker on the podium.
Is this what I'm saying? Oh, wow. I've been looking at this the whole time, and I just didn't do anything about it. Thank you. So what I do now, I am an artist. My main medium is poetry or spoken word. But I also, as you saw, kind of grew up in music through my dad and my grandfather and other family members. However, initially my first passion that I really wanted to do was film. I wanted to tell stories that would change people. I saw inequality and injustice in the world from an early age, given my upbringing, and I felt that the most impactful thing I could do was the way that I was impacted, which was through film, telling stories about oppression and hardship and resistance. That changed as I grew older, but eventually once I found poetry, which I'll get into later, I have just been very fortunate to have opportunities to kind of like tour the country and perform locally, do readings like this and talks, and do a lot of workshops. That being said, with the workshops, being an educator has also been I'm gonna move this mic. Does my voice keep cutting out? No? I'm good? Oh, thank you. So I think education is like really important to me in terms of not just me developing my own artistry, but how can I use some of my learnings to give to others, right, and facilitate their own development as artists. So it's not just about my voice, but how can I like nurture and support other voices too, right? So getting the tools of poetry, art, community organizing into the hands of various communities, especially oftentimes communities that are very marginalized, including people of color, immigrants, youth, and that connects with my role as an organizer. That's probably the biggest hat that I'm wearing right now, is as a community and political organizer. And if you don't know what that means, it's kind of like a more appropriate term for what's like conventionally known as like an activist, right? Oftentimes you think of activism and just think people marching and protesting on the streets. That's just kind of like the tip of the iceberg, right? Beneath that, there's a whole ton of building close relationships with people and trust and doing workshops and dialogues to facilitate that kind of like trust and community action. So a lot of what I focus on is like democracy and democratization and different identities and groups who are kind of pushed out of the democratic process. Migrant justice, immigrant rights is a big passion of mine. Gentrification and housing, which is a lot of the work that I did in Chicago for a number of years. And also like youth power, youth empowerment, so that it's not just like adults and older folks making all the decisions for future generations. All right, I'm gonna try the clicker. Ready? I hope I don't blow it up. Hey, there we go. Oh, no. Okay, we're good. So I'm gonna pause there, actually. I'm gonna do another poem. And this is a poem I wrote a long time ago, a bit about my identity and just grappling with my identity. Biracial boy in social justice seminar is asked to join a racial affinity group. People of color or white. White boy does not want to infiltrate safe space for people of color. Brown boy does not want to keep white people from having honest, constructive dialogue. Biracial boy does not know what he is. Recalls posting a survey on Facebook in middle school asking how people categorize him, that it would determine his clothes, his music, how he spoke. Biracial boy wishes his skin came with an instruction manual. Brown boy tells white boy he should not identify as a person of color, that he can pass, that he should not appropriate a struggle that is not his. White boy tells brown boy he will not identify as white, erase the brown from his blood, will not be the one who finishes the colonization of his own body. White boy visits family in Mexico, realizes that he is the whitest intruder since conquistadors. Brown boy goes to white synagogue, is the only family not invited to the dinner party. Biracial boy is welcome everywhere. Biracial boy is not welcome anywhere. Biracial boy is tug of war, but biracial boy is both sets of hands, pulling at each end, And biracial boy is sorry for this poem, for taking up space, does not know if it's his white self that's doing so, if it's even letting the brown self speak. White boy apologizes for his privilege. Brown boy resents white boy for taking up so much space with apologies. White boy says, I'm sorry. Brown boy says, you're doing it again. Brown boy hates his white. This legacy like shingles all over his face. White boy gone, but biracial boy to brown family is still white, still looks like coyote. Biracial boy is both the discolored sheep of each family and the dog that hunts it, wishes he were purebred and not a mutt. Brown boy asks white boy what it's like not to get profiled, to go to your cousin's wedding in Arizona and feel safe. White boy goes to white barbecue, meets white cop. White cop does not know boy is biracial, starts talking immigration policy. Brown boy screams, hides inside white skin silent. White skin shield, white boy protector, white boy savior. Brown boy does not need white savior, strikes back at white self, but biracial boy during Latinx uprising does not know if he should sit down or speak up, to which army society has drafted him. Biracial boy is tug of war, but biracial boy is the rope, is fraying, cannot hold his selves together. Biracial boy hates being two different selves, recalls it's the world that made him this way, that split him in half, held oppressor and oppressed, insect and the boot, and biracial boy is both of them. Cool. So that's, I'd say, as far as today, like that poem probably communicates a bit more of like what I predominantly try to do with my work. And just to like give a background sense of how I got into writing. So as I mentioned, like I developed this worldview from my parents and communal upbringing that really oriented me towards social justice and towards addressing social injustice. With that, it was like a discomfort, right? I couldn't hold just this knowledge, this experience of inequality and inequity and justice and not do anything about it. That was just not a tension that I could live with. So the only way that I could address that was thinking about what I would actually do about it. And so the two things that came to mind and to heart really were organizing. That felt like the most effective way to create change, and I still feel that way, and storytelling, right? Communicating stories like the ones I just shared to try to convey some of my experience and uplift the experiences of others. So that was through music, film, and writing. And eventually in my high school, there was a poetry slam. Do y'all have like any kind of, I know obviously we're here right now doing Stories Expo. Do you have like any poetry slam or anything like that, an open mic? Anything? Not quite?
We have a literary magazine, and I think a few times over the past decade or so, they've had like an open mic sort of thing in the library, but not recently.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, maybe that's a thought, some exciting ideas to work up. One thing I will shout out before I forget is in Chicago, if you're able to get there, there's a Rooted in Radical Poetry Festival. It's like a statewide youth poetry festival for folks like all across the region. It's really amazing. It's like thousands of high schoolers go and do poetry slam and open mics and things like this. But I had like a very small sample of that when I was in high school, and it got me hooked. I went to a summer program and they introduced me to this poet, Julian Curry, who, if you just look up Julian Curry, there's like a really powerful poem that he has about basically the history of the N-word and the use of the N-word. And I realized in that moment, like, the incredible power of being able to communicate something so deep and heavy and important in a matter of like 2.5 minutes. And I realized like, wow, this is really a tool that we can use to like change folks. And so from there, I got involved in college poetry slam, in adult poetry slam as well, competitions, open mics, communities, that kind of thing. And that was like kind of while I was stepping into college. So on the left there, I went to Emerson College for a year and studied film production because I felt like that's what I wanted to do, as I mentioned. But as poetry kind of took more of a hold, I transferred to Berklee College of Music. or kind of like created my own degree. You're not really supposed to do that, but I did it anyway. And I majored in basically arts for social advocacy. So like thinking about the convergence of like arts and social justice work with also minors in political science and poetry. So really trying to like grab all these things and put them together for the career that I want to do. There we go. So on the left there, that's me and my friend competing in Texas at the National College Poetry Slam there. And we got featured for our poems, so we were like on the big fancy stage. I think I was wearing this exact cardigan. Is this a cardigan? Yeah, I'm really not good with like terminology for things. But, and then in the middle, that's when we won the National Poetry Slam. It's really exciting. That was in the San Francisco Bay Area, as I think about like 2021. And so yeah, these like opportunities were incredible for me. I'm like super lucky that I get to experience them. And I also think that it's like not unfeasible for folks to be, even if it's not poetry, like try to like find and just pursue and dive into these opportunities that can like bring you different places and connect you to different people, because it's kind of just stepping stones. One thing after another will take you to a different place. And then on the right there, that's my book. It's a chapbook called When the Crows Come that I wrote like 4 or 5 years ago. And yeah, I did it with an indie press. My grandfather painted the cover. He's a painter also. And it was really exciting to just be able to like put a product out into the world. I'm gonna pause here for questions. Any questions so far?
Check. Okay, first of all, that last poem you read was like really, really good. That was really impactful. It was really good.
Thank you.
But second, like, what kept you going, and like, especially in college when you said you kind of like created your own major, and like, an entry that isn't known for like stability. What kept you like going to pursue what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was like a really hard period. Like, not gonna lie, like I write about it extensively in this book. But my first year of college, I felt really lost. I knew that film wasn't really something I wanted to pursue as like a career at that point, and I didn't really know what I want to do, but I knew that it wasn't that. And just the adjustment to college was like really difficult for me. Just like had a big toll on my mental health, and I don't think I was fully prepared for like the kind of like support that I would need then. It's interesting what kept me going. I mean, I think family is the first thing. Like, I'm super lucky that my mom, and especially, but also my family more broadly, just like was very supportive for me during that time. And by the time I got to Berkeley, I went for like some personal and financial reasons also, but I had to like figure out a path. So I like toured like a few other schools to see if there was like some other totally different path I went to, if I want to go to political science or like international relations or something like that. And I decided that was too much. I didn't want to transfer to a third school, and I needed to just like make something work. And so I'm glad that I communicated with my department head, and he said like, write a proposal, try to come up with something. And I think thanks to the passions and interests that I already had, I was able to like just develop some kind of vision that would allow me to like do the thing that I want to do. So that is like, if I have like one tip or piece of advice for that. Are y'all juniors, seniors, sophomores? Freshmen. Okay, it's kind of a mix. But anyway, within somewhere between 1 to 3 years, you might be thinking about college. Perhaps not, that's also totally fine. I would say for my experience, to allow yourself to like explore a little bit. I think it's, to me, when I look back on it, I'm like, it's kind of crazy that like, I was just born like 17 years ago, and now I have to decide what I'm doing for the rest of my life. That's a little loco. But so I would say like give yourself time to explore, tease out like different things, take classes in things that you wouldn't think you're normally interested in, and also don't be afraid to like do the make your own major out, because a lot of colleges allow for that and sometimes encourage it. And if you know what you want to do and you have a vision, like I totally support. I think folks should really take advantage of that. Cool. Any other questions?
What was the first time you saw your work really impact someone, and what effect did that have on you and motivating you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably in high school, also like still mental health poems in this book. The crows are a metaphor for depression, spoiler alert. But that's like a lot of what that was unpacking for me around that time. And I wrote a poem about it and shared it. And I will say, like, I think I was probably in too vulnerable a space to share it. Like, looking back, like, if I could tell my younger self something, I would have been like, hey, you don't have to do this right now. But I do remember experiencing, like, sharing it aloud, and I can't think of a particular moment, but I remember, like, the first couple times I shared it, it just, like, resonated with a lot of people, like, just, like, growing up is hard, and, like, mental health is still, like, really stigmatized, and it's oftentimes hard to get support, and I think folks just maybe, like, saw themselves a little bit in the poem, which is what I wanted out of it. And that felt like really empowering, just like the idea that I could just like with a paper and pen do something that can like chemically like change people's bodies in a certain way for the better. Yeah. Cool.
I have a quick question for you. A lot of times as teachers, we will see talent in a lot of our students, but they don't see it in themselves. When did you know, it's kind of a weird question, but when did you know you were good at writing poetry? You know, like poetry slams maybe come find you now, but when did, like you had to go find poetry slams, you had to, so like when did you have the confidence to know this is something I'm good at?
Yeah. I think like when I realized that it was something that I wanted to dedicate myself to, like I think early on I wrote poems that I didn't really like take enough time to like work on. Here's what I'll say, like the synopsis. I don't think like talent is really something that folks are born with. I think it's something that you like work on. And if you want something to like feel good, then you work on it, but then you also share it. Like you don't wait to share it until like you become this master poet. Like you become a master poet by sharing your work, if that makes sense, because that stimulates like feedback and you get some like reception and sense of like, okay, this line's really good. This line like maybe I want to work on a little bit. But I think like you have like innate talent already and you're just kind of taking the hammer and chisel to it to like feel even better about it. But I think like the biggest holdback is when you think that it has to be perfect already in order to share it. Let go of that. It's like okay for things to suck. Like it's really good to share things that like you don't feel perfect about, or you might feel like it's kind of crappy, but like any poem, like the poem that I just shared earlier, there are probably like 40 or 50 drafts of that suck. They're like really bad, and it took a long time of just like chiseling at it, but also just sharing it a lot. And like even though I felt like the overall thing was kind of crappy, I knew that there was like talent and skill and something of value in there. So just like really try to let those pieces shine and share it with folks, and kind of let that support you to build into something stronger. Cool. How are we on time?
We have about a little less than 15 minutes.
Okay. I don't know why I thought it was 45. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna present it a little bit more, and then I'll share one more poem, and then we'll figure it out. Okay, so a little bit about like why I write, right? I would say like number one, a first thing was like catharsis. I think I felt this urgency, this like burning inside me that I would like learn things that I felt the world had to know about. It wasn't okay with me that I was experiencing or witnessing different oppressions or injustices or even learning about them historically or in modern day and not communicating or doing something about it. So it was really cathartic for me personally to like have that release. But also like on an emotional level, I think it was a way of processing. It's a way of processing the world and processing life. And that was like what it was for me. And I also recognize that for readers and listeners, that's also a method of processing. It's just like engaging with that work and receiving it. The other thing I'll say is that my poetry really, I perceive as like an extension of my organizing and activism. I think there are things that art can do to change people that like other political activity can't really do. And there's just like an emotional connection that you can stimulate with an audience or a reader or a listener that other political work can't really do. And the other thing I'll say is that a lot of times our stories are told for us, right? There are like plenty of institutions with lots of money and power and voice that are running news cycles and advertisements and TV shows, and they're telling stories about us, but not necessarily by us. Sometimes that's the case, and that's awesome when it happens, but also like, I don't want to leave it up to them. I kind of want to take more command over my own story and what is shared about me and my identity and my communities, and I definitely encourage y'all to do the same. So I kind of see art as our method of making our own media when we don't have millions of dollars to be like, put an ad out being like, hi, I'm Tim and I like baseball, right? You can write your poem, you can make your film, you can write a song about you, Tim, and in your passion for baseball and how you learned it from your family, and it's this pastime from generations, like whatever it is, but you have the power to like tell your own story with art. And these are some photos of more like community engagements. On the left, I was in Worcester, Massachusetts with a big statewide group of homeless activists, folks who are like either homeless themselves or supporting people in homelessness, and I did a workshop on how to use poetry and spoken word as like a mental health tool for people experiencing houselessness. In the middle, that was shortly after the 2016 election, and I did a poem at a immigrant rights rally to kind of, again, stir up similar emotion that sometimes just like marching and protesting and chanting can't always necessarily achieve. And on the right, I was doing a brief workshop and gallery tour here in Chicago at the National Mexican Museum of Art, and it was a youth workshop. And yeah, as I mentioned, like community engagement and using art to connect with youth and connect young people and adults like with each other to kind of build more community power, identity, purpose, political education is one way that I feel like I'm able to achieve change. I'm gonna say this thing. And so my approach to writing, so my time is like limited these days, and generally, as I mentioned, like I'm really passionate about the organizing and activism piece of my work. And so if I'm gonna write a poem, for me, like I want it to be very intentional. There's a lot of ideas that I have, and I just don't take the time to like write them all out. And so I kind of developed this Venn diagram practice that I try to think about, and sometimes encourage other people to think about when they want to create a poem or any artistic product of their own, and you feel like I have hundreds of ideas, I don't know what to choose to work on. This is one tool that I often introduce. So on the top left, it says, what stories feel most urgent for you to tell? So it's like you personally, do you have like that burning fire in you that you need to tell the story? What stories feel most urgent for the world to hear? So maybe there's like 10 or 20 stories that you have this fire in, but maybe there's a way you can narrow it down by like, oh, a couple of these feel like the world really needs to hear this, right? And then at the bottom, what stories are you uniquely positioned to tell? Right, so maybe there is, I'm trying to think of an example. There could be a story, right, where it's like you feel this fire to tell it and you think the world needs to hear it urgently, but also like a lot of other people are telling it. Is there a story that's like unique for you that other people can't share, that you can? So sometimes I use this tool or incorporate it to try to think through like, we have this whole mess of ideas, how can we narrow it down a little bit to focus on something? Okay. Let's see. Any other questions for right now? Cool. I'm gonna read another poem, and then if we have some more time, we can go back into it. Okay. I didn't know what to call this poem. It's about poems, so I just called it Poem. Poem. I want you to jump off of the page, poem. I mean it. I want you to perform an elaborate dance for the reader. I want you to have theatrics. I want you to be blue lights flashing with white shimmers and glimmers and scorching pyrotechnics. I want you to sing, poem. Oh, I pray so badly for you to sing. An orchestra sprawling from your mouth. I want you to move and shake the reader alive, like they've been asleep and need to wake up. I want you to heal our dear reader. I want you to be a sorcerer, a priestess. I want you to lift people alive. I want you to be so much more than what you are, poem. I'm so sorry, so dearly sorry, poem. I expect so much of you, too much of you, poem. I want you to do so much more than what you are, but you are mere language on a stripped parchment of tree. Maybe, if we are lucky, someone will raise you to their eyes and notice you. Maybe they will remark on what adrenaline, serotonin, and dopamine you cause to react in them. Maybe, if we are lucky, they might speak of your existence to another. But I believe, even in your most significant potential, you will be another file of memory, logged away in the back of a drawer far behind more drawers. I wanted you to take on the world, poem, but you are no doctor nor Armageddon. Perhaps if you were a dance or a song or a play or a film, but I believe they are all poems as well. Perhaps fire, poem. I want you to be fire and spread wildly and allow seeds of now to grow into husks of the old. Not metaphorically, no, but I think fire is a poem. I want you to be fire, poem. I want fire to be you. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Perfect. So we're going to do like a deep, a brief meditation again. Think back like earlier to what you reflected on at the beginning, right? About who and what brought you here. I spoke a bit about like who and what brought me here, a little bit of my output, and what I want to contribute to the world, but I want to offer that same reflection to y'all. What do you want to bring to the world, right? What will you bring to the world? So again, if you want to write this out, if you want to just take 30 seconds to reflect on it, feel free to close your eyes and just think about that. What do you want to bring into the world? So anything come up for people that you would be down to share? I'll also take a question also, but if anybody wants to share like a reflection that came up of what they want to bring to the world, that would be awesome. That's all right. You can pair it with a question too. yeah, any questions, and feel free to pair this reflection with it.
I want to bring happiness.
Nice. Yes, give it up for happiness, please. Do you have a question as well? No? That's perfect. I love that.
I want to bring a new perspective into people's lives about like opening up, about knowing what other people's stories are and being interested in their stories as well.
Nice, nice, beautiful. Give it up for that. I love that. New perspective on things. Are there any poets, writers, artists in the room? Artists? Of any kind. I see like a half hand there. Real coy. Okay. What kind of art do you do?
Me and her in theater, she does band, both do choir. I draw a bit.
Nice, nice.
I do.
Do you have like a favorite out of those?
I don't know, they all have different things that are so fun and different. And sometimes you can find them, it's crazy.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think some of my favorite things have been collaborations with like dancers or musicians, but that's awesome.
We have some artists back here too.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah, go ahead. What do you draw?
animation.
Yeah, so we have an animator. back
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. That's awesome. Do you, what kind of like animation do you like to do? Cartoons? Nice.
We have one back here.
I'm in choir as well, but I've also been like dancing most of my life, and so I like to like portray a lot of like my emotions and my personal views like through dance and through like the music I choose for those dances and stuff like that.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.